Journal continues.
At our table this morning is Representative Rob Woodall, who is a Republican of Georgia, Transportation Infrastructure Committee member as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Greta.
Let's start with infrastructure. The president in his State of the Union address called for legislation. What would you like to see?
Well, we've got to fund infrastructure. We can't borrow that money. This is one of those things that everybody in Metro Atlanta sitting in traffic every day cares about. Everybody in Metro Los Angeles cares about. We have a funding stream today that just doesn't meet the needs of America in the 21st century. And so we've seen bipartisan agreement. Not only do we need to change the volume of the revenue stream, we need to change the method. Cars are getting better gas mileage. Cars are coming off the road as ride-sharing services go on the road. So vehicle miles traveled taxes look like the future for that funding stream. The Transportation Infrastructure Committee has always been one of the most bipartisan committees on Capitol Hill. We got a lot done with a Republican Congress and the Obama administration. We'll get a lot done with a Democratic Congress and the Trump administration.
Did a Republican just call for a new tax?
They are changing the way we collect the tax.
Explain that.
Well, taxes are a fact of life. If you want good roads in your community, if you want to make your kid's soccer game on time, you have to pay for the infrastructure to make that happen. But today, we have the same gas tax we had in 1993, even though our cars are getting twice the gas mileage that they were getting in 1993. That's not a sustainable model for the future. I'm a big fan of user fees. Taxes hit everybody, whether they're involved in the benefits or not. User fees hit those folks who use those resources. So a vehicle miles traveled tax takes those folks who use the roads, puts the burden of funding the roads on them. We all buy goods at Walmart or TJ Maxx or Home Depot, and so we're all using the roads to have those products shipped in. If the shippers are paying those fees, we're ultimately paying those fees as consumers.
So how would it work?
Well, that's the challenge that we're facing. We have pilot projects going on around the country right now. But when I fill out my vehicle registration form every year, for example, Georgia wants to know how many miles have I traveled? What's my odometer reading today? So you could do it in a one lump sum fee at the end of the year, just like a vehicle registration. I had 10,000 miles last year. I'm up to 22,000 miles this year, so I'm going to pay a vehicle miles travel tax on those 12,000 additional miles. You could do it tracking as trucking companies do. They're tracking their drivers as they're driving around, and so you could pay that fee incrementally. Right now, Chairman DeFazio has talked about raising the gas tax. In the short term, Republican Chairman Bill Schuster talked about raising the gas tax in the short term as a part of a transition to a new 21st century funding scheme.
Yeah, let's listen to Congressman DeFazio. He's now the new chair of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. He was at the Chamber of Commerce this week. Here's what he had to say.
Now, there's a huge reluctance among many of my colleagues, and you've got to help with this. They are afraid. They're scared. My God, if we raise the federal gas tax, I might lose my election. So I put forward an absolutely de minimis proposal. The Chamber's been much more bold, and hopefully we can go bold. But I said, all right, well, let's look at what price do you think could you get away with? So I came up with something called a penny for progress. And that is to index the existing gas and diesel taxes to take care of some of the problems you've heard about in terms of increased efficiency and obviously the escalating costs of investing in infrastructure, adjusting for construction cost inflation, and then cap it. Now, in the version I introduced last year, I capped it at 1.5 cents a gallon a year, because I'd say to people, raise your hand if you think if gas goes up 1.5 cents, you're going to lose your election. No one raises their hand, but some of them still think it. And with that, 1.5 cents, or if you went bold to 2, you could tranche bonds over 13 years that would total $600 billion.
So, Congressman, let's take a look at what it is right now. 18.4 cents per gallon on gasoline, 24.4 cents per gallon on highway diesel fuel. What is the chairman saying here? Let's raise it to a little over 19 cents or almost 20 cents?
That's the pitch he's making to the Chamber of Commerce. And to be fair, on the diesel side, every shipper, every trucker, UPS is based in my district, and UPS will come in every year since I've been in Congress and say, we're willing to pay more if we get more. What I need to see is the second half of Chairman DeFazio's speech, where he answers the question for the American taxpayer: if I give you an additional dollar in taxes, am I going to get an additional dollar of value in infrastructure? And today we're not in that proposition. We see the orange cones go up, but the orange cones never go down. We see something that should have taken a month to get done, and it takes a year to get done. We've got to have that conversation on T&I too. How do we streamline the permitting process? How do we streamline the construction process?
So you want to make sure that that is included in any proposal that's put forward?
Absolutely, because in my conservative suburban district in Metro Atlanta, folks don't mind paying for value that they get. They just want to pay for value. And if we can demonstrate that we're going to get you a dollar's worth of value, they don't mind paying for those roads, bridges, resources that they use every day of the week.
Well, I wonder what our viewers have to say about that. Invite them to call in and participate in this conversation about infrastructure. And are you willing to pay more to see better infrastructure where you live? So what is the timeline, do you think, of getting legislation through the House? And do you think it could be bipartisan, that this is something Democrats and Republicans come together on?
We'll see how Chairman DeFazio runs the committee, but I expect he'll run it in the same way that previous Republicans and Democrats have run it, and that is that almost every bill that moves through has the sign-off of the chairman and the ranking member, the chairman and the ranking member of the subcommittee as well. It's one of the most bipartisan committees on the Hill, which is why we're so productive. I hope it moves quickly. Obviously, Congress is not off to a flawless start this year. There are those who thought that the Republican Congress 2 years ago should have started with infrastructure and transportation. Instead, we started with health care and never got around to transportation. So I hope we do start with transportation. It will build relationships. It'll build trust among serious legislators, and I think it will benefit other issues down the road.
Well, let's talk to Marion, who's in Daleville, Virginia, a Democrat. Hi, Marion.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Good morning.
Good morning.
I just finished talking to my accountant, and my accountant told me that I'm a middle class, don't make a lot of money, and I'm going to be paying more in taxes than I did in the last years. So I'm one of those middle class people that apparently is one of the losers. So what I was going to ask you to do for your infrastructure spending is, since that $1.5 trillion in tax cuts, 83 cents to every dollar went to the rich. Apparently, I'm paying for it since I'm getting much less back this year. Why don't we just use that for your infrastructure? Just go ahead and get rid of that silly $1.5 trillion that we didn't pay for. I guess now the middle class, I guess people like me, are going to pay for to give the rich a big tax break. Anyway, I'm really ticked off after talking to my accountant, and I'm sure I'm not alone, and a lot of people are going to feel like I am once they find out that all those that money that was given, the $40 or $30 more into my paycheck. Well, now not only is that being taken away, but even more it has been. So it really was a con job on the middle class.
So, Congressman, respond to that, but also, what does this mean for selling an infrastructure bill where you're saying, trust the government, we're going to change the tax system?
It's a big ask to trust the government. And you heard from Marion, we promised middle-class tax benefits across the country. I'm hearing that from my constituents, that they're seeing that. Of course, Marion, you know we changed the withholding tables. You talked about your tax burden in terms of what you're going to get back because we withheld less from every check you got last year. It should be true that you get less back, but your total tax bill should be less as well. But to answer your question directly about the tax cuts from last year and the infrastructure bill from this year, the infrastructure today is a user fee. And we can absolutely do what you have suggested, and that's disconnect those who benefit from transportation from those who pay for transportation. But I think that's a mistake. Folks always feel that taxes are unfair. They always feel like they're paying too much and their neighbor isn't paying enough. When we have a strict user fee system where those who use pay, we take away all of those misunderstandings about where the burden falls. So I think it'd be a great mistake to leave the user fee system that we have today.
Congressman, where would the burden fall then? Who would be paying the most? Give us an idea of who these people are.
Well, if you are a user of mass transit, for example, you're paying a fee every single day to get on that bus, to get on that train, to ride. You're not going to be paying the tax directly as I am commuting 45 miles in my car every day. But yes, that bus is still paying for diesel fuel. Yes, you're still paying a vehicle miles traveled tax. It's going to fall ultimately on us as consumers, which is where every tax falls. There is no tax that somebody else pays. We all have to pay that as consumers. It's just that it would be proportional to how much we use the system. If you pay extra to live on top of a metro line so you can commute to work on mass transit, you might end up paying less in a transportation tax than someone who drives on the highway for 60 miles a day.
How are states going to respond when they have their own gas taxes?
We've had a very positive response from our states. In fact, so often we're seeing states driving the debate on funding revenue. Since the gas tax hasn't changed since 1993, but we've had roads and bridges in need of repair since 1993. Who do you think's been picking up that additional burden for the past 25 years? The answer is states and localities. As the federal government has been doing less proportionally, states have been doing more. So they're very supportive of us finding some permanency to a funding stream that they can count on as a federal partner for a decade or 2 or 3 going forward.
Gary is next. He's a Republican in Norwood, New York.
Yeah, I got a question there about the gas tax and stuff, user fees of the roads. Okay, I don't own a car because I'm a disabled veteran, and what it is, I know if I had to pay user fees like public transportation, how come the Amish doesn't pay the user fees and stuff? And they use the roads all the time because I live in the country and I see them go by all the time and they use the roads. And also, I'd like to know why these gas stations they like to price gouge too, because I know one gas station is like 5 or 10 cents cheaper than the one down the road.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Gary, what I love about gas stations, and of course, your location in New York, you may not have as many street corners as I do in Metro Atlanta. I've got 4 gas stations on every corner. And so there is no ability to price gouge. It's the most competitive industry in the state. If somebody lowers their price by a penny, everybody else is lowering their price by a penny. If you try to take too much money from me, I'll drive a mile down the road and I'll get a better deal. We do want to keep our energy prices competitive because energy drives our entire economy. But you should be a beneficiary of a vehicle miles traveled tax, Gary. You're not leaving the house to get those goods and services, as so many of us are. Today, it's very easy to raise the diesel tax on business because voters don't feel it directly. If Walmart is paying the tax, Walmart prices go up, but voters don't know it's because the diesel tax went up. By moving to a vehicle miles traveled tax where we can distribute it fairly across all consumers, folks like yourself who don't use a vehicle as often should be a beneficiary of an ultimate tax burden.
What if you are getting everything shipped to your house? Are you going to end up paying that tax somehow?
Absolutely. And again, we can hide the tax anywhere. If I never raise the gasoline tax again, but just raise the diesel tax to $2, $5, $20, then yes, every Amazon delivery is going to have that built into the price. Every Walmart store built in the price. Every Home Depot store has to build it in to the price. Rather than hide the tax as if we're putting it on businesses instead of consumers, the transparency of a vehicle miles traveled tax, I think, is going to engender more trust between the boss of America, the American voter, and the government that's trying to provide the infrastructure.
We'll go to Grand Gorge, New York. Lee, a Republican.
Hi. I was concerned because maybe I'm just pessimistic, but it seems to me that when Obama had the $800 billion infrastructure money that he said wasn't shovel-ready, I'm concerned if you were going to use federal monies, could states use it as miscellaneous discretionary spending? And also, at the same time, how do we know that these states will be using federal funds for what they're supposed to be using? I live in a rural community, and I have to travel sometimes 60 miles to see a doctor and back. It's a 120-mile round trip. And how would a gas tax wouldn't that be punitive to me? Thank you.
Lee, you raise a lot of important questions. Remember, today we already have that 18.4 cents a gallon gas tax that you are paying on your 120-mile journey. But if you're driving an older car and a young millennial is driving a Toyota Prius that's getting 60 miles to the gallon, you're paying more for your 120-mile journey. That young person with the new car is paying less for the 120-mile journey. That's the unfairness we're trying to solve in a vehicle miles traveled tax. If we're all using the roads the same amount, we should all be paying the same amount. You shouldn't be disadvantaged just because you're driving an older car. As for states, what we found is states actually use the dollars more efficiently than the federal government does. I'll give you one example from my home state in Georgia. I-85, Interstate 85, the major transportation corridor through Atlanta, we had a bridge fire that collapsed the bridge. I thought it was going to take a year to rebuild that bridge. We put out a contract. They said, no, we can get it done in 8 weeks. Truth is, they got it done in even less time. They got a $3 million bonus for doing the job under time and under budget. Do you know how many conservative Republicans complained to me about that $3 million bonus? Zero. Because it was the first time in anybody's recollection that we'd had a federal construction project done under time and under budget. I believe voters will pay for performance. It's paying for non-performance that makes everyone so suspicious of federal dollars. I can build a county road or a state road for less than I can build a federal road because of regulatory burdens. And so pushing those dollars down to the state level actually should save you money in the rural areas.
Let's go to Ohio. Ripley, Ohio. Robert, an independent.
Hello. Thank you, C-SPAN, for taking my call. As far as increasing a gas tax, I mean, I like the bang for your buck thing for the taxpayer, but I'm a big-time libertarian. I think the federal government should definitely be a lot more limited than what it is. And honestly, I mean, rather than increasing a gas tax, why doesn't the government just cut funding from other things like you know, we gave $56 billion in foreign aid to other countries just last year. Like, we can't use some of that for infrastructure, or like, you know, welfare programs cost the system and federal government and taxpayers a ton of money. Things like Medicare, Medicaid. I mean, Medicaid I'm not really against because it does help poor people. But, you know, like, you trying to get welfare programs and Social Security
so
costs.
Robert, let's have the congressman jump in. We hear the point that you're making. Isn't there money somewhere else?
Well, to Robert's point, today we're not funding transportation simply with gas taxes, Robert. We're borrowing money from the general fund. That 18.4 cents that was set in 1993, that's long since run out. And so as a libertarian, you appreciate the challenge. We tell people that they're paying for what they're getting in roads, but it's not true. We're borrowing that money, to the tune of about $54 billion from our children and our grandchildren. That's when we talk about raising a gas tax, we're not talking about raising it to try to do a lot more. We're talking about raising it so that people are actually paying for what they're getting instead of passing the bill on to our children and our grandchildren. Watch the House floor today. We're going to begin debate on a veterans bill. This is a bill that passed last year unanimously in committee, unanimously on the House floor. It provided new benefits for veterans, and it found a way to pay for those benefits. This bill is coming back to the floor today in a Democratic House. It's providing the exact same benefits to veterans, but all of the ways to pay for it have been taken away. And so instead, we're going to end up either borrowing additional money or cutting other veterans' benefits elsewhere. Finding ways to pay for things is always the hardest thing that happens on Capitol Hill. And as you think about what's going to happen over the next 2 years, remember we had a unanimous agreement on a good pay for last year that mysteriously slipped away this year. Your continued push to pay for what we're doing is absolutely necessary, and I hope you will not stop.
Doug is a Republican in Woodway, Texas. Hi, Doug. You're on the air. Please go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think the thought of increasing the gas tax is foolish. It should be predicated primarily on mileage driven because everybody's advocating going to electric, and that would cover that and get rid of the antiquated gas tax and revert to something else.
Okay, Doug, we'll have to take that. You got to listen through your phone, turn down the TV. Go ahead.
I think Doug's exactly right. And I think that's going to be, you heard Chairman DeFazio, the Democratic leader of the committee, talk just about increasing the gas tax. I think if you'd gone on to the rest of his discussion, and certainly if you come to the Republican policy papers, we're talking about abolishing the gas tax and moving entirely to that vehicle miles traveled tax that you talk about, Doug. That is the only fair way to fund a system as there are more hybrid vehicles and more electric vehicles on the road. You can count on me and the entire Texas delegation to keep pushing in the direction that you're advocating.
And if you want to listen to more of what the chairman had to say, Peter DeFazio, you can go to our website, cspan.org, and you can find his speech there. Marty in Highland, Indiana, Democrat.
Hello?
Hi, Marty.
Hello?
Question or comment for the congressman?
I'm on the air. Okay.
You are.
Here in Indiana, we charge $15 per registration. I own 5 vehicles, no kids, no wife. I'm the only one that can drive them. I would rather pay per mile tax or per gallon tax than I would per vehicle tax. They're getting me back to the single guy, let him pay for the married people. Same thing with property taxes and, school funds. So it's just, I would much rather see them go to a straight up either miles per or a per gallon.
Okay, well,
because
Marty,
I can't drive 5 vehicles at one time.
But Marty, let's have the congressman respond, because are states going to do away with their revenue streams because you in Washington passed this new user fee? I mean, are they going to say, okay, we won't charge you to register your vehicles anymore?
It's an open question about how states respond. Marty, I agree with you 100%, though we would never support a federal law that mandated how your state handles those issues. States would still be free to handle it as it is best for the state. And today, states piggyback a state gas tax on top of a federal gas tax, piggyback a state income tax on top of a federal income tax. When we move to a vehicle miles traveled tax, it would not surprise me at all if states moved their piggybacking system to our vehicle miles traveled tax instead. But the goal would not be to dictate state behavior. It would be to lead by example.
We'll go to Omaha, Nebraska. Chris, independent caller. Good morning.
Hey, I'm trying to figure out why we've done absolutely nothing with high-speed rail or bullet trains. When I was in Tokyo last year, it seems to me to be a no-brainer that you take space along I-80 and just run a huge high-speed rail along there. And is it just a dollar thing or a lack of interest or what? Or just you guys just can't get anything done?
Well, heavy rail is absolutely the most expensive way to build mass transit. It's the most glamorous. It's the most direct if you can build a train from one location to another. But I want you to look at 2 things that are happening around the country. One, look at what's going on in California and their high-speed rail system. Billions and billions and billions of dollars invested, nothing to show for it yet, cost overruns that would make us all uncomfortable going forward. Look at what's going on in Florida, where they have a private rail line that has recently gone in. It was going to be high speed when they first created it. As you say, there's a wonderful demand for it. So once they created the path for it, every single small town along the route wanted a stop. Well, I can only put so many stops on a high-speed train before it becomes a slow-speed train. Those are our challenges in building high-speed rail. In the Northeastern Corridor, where Amtrak serves so many consumers, there's a lot of support for rail. In my part of the world, in Georgia, if I want to drive from Atlanta to Savannah, it's going to take me about 4 hours. If I want to take the train, it's going to take me 3 days. Where we don't have much infrastructure in rail already, there's no space to put that infrastructure in. Florida's done the best job of that, but we've seen states struggle to find that rail right of way.
Gene in Bowie, Maryland, Democratic caller.
Yes, good morning. I'm in favor of increasing gas tax because our highway infrastructure is necessary to our fundamental economic growth, and it is in serious disrepair. Second, I'm opposed to the $15 billion tax we've spent last year on ethanol. That is, we're forced to consume 15 billion gallons of ethanol, which only moved our vehicles as far as 10 billion gallons of gas. I wouldn't mind so much if it was actually a really good environmental improvement. Although it didn't decrease our auto emissions, the cost of growing corn and converting it into ethanol entails more environmental costs. So we get no environmental punch-off, and we get $15 billion extra money. And worse yet, the policy right now is to go from 10% ethanol to 15% ethanol. If you're really a free market person, will you do what President Reagan and President Bush Sr. did and support letting methanol have a chance to compete at the pump? MIT has methanol engines that are very efficient and could compete if they were given a chance.
Congressman.
I think Gene's absolutely right, Greta. There is a future in methanol, and it is the under-discussed energy resource that we have. Gene, you've been watching politics on ethanol, so you know there were the Republicans who opposed moving to an ethanol mandate 20 years ago are now the same Republicans who represent farm country, where folks are making billions and billions of dollars on corn production, moving to ethanol. We've changed the voting dynamic in that debate. It's very hard to unwind ethanol as it sits here today. I agree with you. It might have seemed like the best choice we had at the time we created that mandate. Now science has eclipsed ethanol. I do think we have better choices going down the road. We don't have the votes to eliminate that mandate as we sit here today.
On our line for Independence, Jake, Montgomery, Texas.
So
Hi,
what
Jake.
I'm going to say, hi, good morning. What I'm going to say about our president and his legislative priorities is that if we trust him and do not make any obstacle on our president's way to make a great United States, we will see a much more better country in near future, like what we can see in our economy right now. So I want every single of American people to cooperate with Mr. President, because we will get everything through solidarity. Why there is no benefit in the division. Thank you.
Jake, you have observed the toxicity in politics today. It's true with President Trump. It was true with President Obama. Folks would call into the office and say, Rob, I want you to support a bill. Then they'd find out President Obama was supporting that same bill. They'd call me back and say, Rob, you've got to get off that bill. It must be bad if President Obama is supporting it. We see the same thing with President Trump today. We have to get past the idea that poking each other with sharp sticks is what makes America great. It absolutely isn't. We can get good things done no matter who is in the White House. Congress must lead on those legislative issues, but the president must put his or her signature on those issues. I hope you are right. I hope, as the president gave what I would argue was the best speech of his political career, he opened more doors than he closed during that speech. That's what we've all been crying out for. What are those opportunities to work together? I heard more of those on Tuesday night than I've heard at any time in the last 2 years. We should take yes for an answer and get to work on those problems that our constituents sent us here to work on.
Before we let you go, Congressman, you're proposing the Civics Learning Act. What is it?
Greta, we've got to talk about what makes America great. It's a bill that I've introduced with Alcee Hastings from Florida, Democrat from Florida. We're good friends on the Rules Committee, and while we disagree a lot on individual public policies, what we agree on is there's something special about America. One of those things that's special about America is that the boss doesn't live in the nation's capital. The boss lives in the nation's communities all across this country. So are we teaching our children what those obligations are as a member of the Board of Directors of the United States of America, what those responsibilities are as a citizen of the United States, not just what your rights and privileges are, but what your duties are to your community, to your state, to your country. We have American history classes, but we don't have those responsibility classes. There are some states that are doing it better than others, and what we've proposed are some pilot programs to make sure we're teaching American exceptionalism. We have opportunities here that nobody else in the world has. There is still more that unites us than divides us, and the day we forget that is the day that the sun begins to set on America.
Congressman Rob Woodall, Republican of Georgia. You can follow him if you go to woodall.house.gov on Twitter, as well as @Rep Woodall. Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you, Greta.
Appreciate it. We're going to take a break.